Hello everyone and welcome to another chess tutorial. It's the big one today, the Bishop and Knight Checkmate versus the King. Don't be scared though, I'm here to guide you through it. The ending can be quite tricky, especially with the 50 move rule. Now first off, I'm just going to take you through the starting position that you need to achieve in order to checkmate the King. And it's on the board already, so you need this position and it's white to move here. And the idea is to get the black King into the corner this way. Checkmate can only be achieved by forcing the king into the corner that is controlled by your own bishop. So keep that in mind. We can't checkmate if the king moves this way, to the right, into the black corner. We'll go through how to achieve this setup in the next part of the video, but for the first part let's just say you've got into this position. So how do you win from here? Well, you're just going to push this black king into the corner. So how do we do this? Well, the first move, obviously, to stop the black king moving to the dark square, is to play bishop to h7. So immediately we're cutting off this square, and the king only has one square, so it's forced to go to king to e8. And now we need to stop the black king from getting out this way. So we can use our own king, but the knight can also come in very handy indeed. So we play knight to e5 here, and what this does is cuts off a d7 square to the black king. And our own king is also controlling a lot of squares. Now there are many moves that black can play, and we'll come back to this, but I want to go through the most challenging first, which is king to d8. This because it's trying to escape from all these white pieces. And the correct move in this position is to play king to e6. And what this does is just limits more squares, which we're using the power of the opposition of the kings to push this king further into the corner. Now you may be thinking king c7 here, so the king moves c7 trying to get out, but we can use the power of the knight. The knight moves in a W formation, so it started here, it moves to here, and it can come back this way. So we play knight d7 here, and what this does is cuts off the dark squares. It cuts off this one and this one. If the king moves the king to b7, we can play bishop to d3 to cut it off, and it's also got these two squares cut off by the knight. Black goes king to c6. We also play bishop to d3, cutting off all these squares, so the black king can no longer escape. If he goes back to king c7, now we cut it off even more. We play bishop to e4 and limit the black king even further. The king's forced backwards, back to the 8th rank. And again we use the power of opposition, king to d6. If the king tries to escape this way back to the dark squares, so king e8, we can play bishop to g6, and we're back after king d8. We're back into our near starting position. So after bishop f7, we're back to the position that we started with, which is this one. So it's just the same, except everything's just moved a step further. So as in the previous setup, black is forced to move king c8, and white just moves the knight again in the W formation. We play knight to c5, cutting off these squares to get out. If king d8, knight to b7 forces the king one square closer to the white corner. King c8 and now king c6. King b8 is the only move, king b8. And now king b6. Black attempts to escape one more time with king c8, but now we just play bishop to e6. So that's check, and this square is covered by the knight. The king's forced to b8, and now we're into the phase where we just need to checkmate the king. The king can't escape because these squares are all covered and the bishop's covered, which leaves the knight spare. So we can manoeuvre the knight around. Knight to c5, king a8 forced, and now we just need a waiting move. Make sure you don't play something like knight a6 here, that will be stalemate. Instead we play bishop to d7, just waiting for the king to move to b8 so we can come in with a timely check. King's got one more square, and bishop to c6 is checkmate. Notice how we move the knight from here to here to here to here and here in the W formation. So if it looks like the king's about to get out, always remember to move your knight in this way. Let's go back to the original position because there are other tries that black can use. So again we play bishop to h7, cutting the king off. So king e8 is forced. Knight to e5. But the king can also try king f8 here. It doesn't have to go to d8, it can play f8. So in this case we carry on with the w idea. We play knight to d7 check. The king's forced to e8. And now we play king e6. And king d8 is forced. King d6. And as we've seen before, if king e8 here, we play bishop to g6. And king d8 is forced. And now we play bishop to f7 for zugzwang. We want the black king to move first, so we can use the power of opposition. King c8 is forced, and now knight c5, as you've seen before, just limiting these squares. So if king d8, knight to b7, and king c8, king to c6. And now king b8 is forced, king b6 again. And if he tries to escape, we just check, king b8. And now we're going to get them into that mating trap again. Knight c5, king a8, waiting move with bishop d7, king b8 and knight to a6, and checkmate. After knight e5, king f8 and knight d7, the king's forced to e8. So king e6, king d8, king d6. Here black can also try king c8, trying to escape on the other side of the board. But here we follow the king, knight c5 again. And if king d8, we play bishop to g6, cutting off this square. And the king's forced to c8. But now of course it's white's move, so we just play a waiting move. So we play bishop to f7 to force the king to move on our terms. If king d8, we get back into our normal position, where knight b7, king c8 and king c6, and we're going to mate the black king again. Another move is king b8, which is we've not met before. But if you just shift your perspective, we can actually play king d7 here. The black king's already trapped in the correct corner, it's just a matter of technique. Let's say the king goes to a7, now we just play king c7, and we're in the same position, just on another view. The black king can't escape any of these squares, so the black king's forced to a8. We play bishop c4, just waiting, king a7, and now knight d7. The bishop is used to lock out the black king from escaping. So the king a8, knight b6, check, checkmate. To fully master this endgame, you need to practice this technique many times with opposite coloured bishops as well, and from different perspectives. As I've shown, it's not as tricky as first feared. The secret is to use this knight and remember where to put it, and just always use waiting moves to force the black king into the correct corner. For instance, we could get this position with black to move. So if it's black's move in this position and they go king e8, so we can use the bishop to get to our starting position. Bishop e3, king f1, bishop to d2, the king's forced to g1, bishop f4, king f1, and now bishop to h7. The king goes to e1 and we can start our sequence to get the king into the correct corner. So let's go through it. King d1, king e6. If the king decides to take a flight square, we just play knight to d2. The king's going to try and escape, we just put the bishop back and there's no escape for it. The king goes backwards, we move our bishop backwards. And if the king tries to trick us with some cheeky manoeuvre, we just trap it, cutting it off. The king can't escape, the king's forced this way, and now we start again with our manoeuvre. And this is what you should be doing, just moving the pieces, just trying to remember this sequence. So just practicing these sequences can really help, and that's just the secret to it really. So how do we get into the starting position? Well, I'll go through it with you. The idea is to just get the king into one of those patterns that we saw earlier. It doesn't even have to be the starting sequence, as long as it's one of the sequences that we've got. So I'll just do an example. You should be able to push the king into a corner using the pieces, and that's the main idea. So after here, let's say we go king b2, king d3, and now it's just a case of getting the pieces out and controlling squares. This is just an example variation. But we use the pieces to check here. The king goes to d4. And we're just using waiting moves. The king moves, king c3, we're pushing the king away from the centre. King e5 and king d3. Just moving our own king into the centre, pushing the king. Knight to e3 check using the power of the bishop. King f6, and now bishop d5. Just using our pieces like pushing a sheep into a pen. King g7. Now if you're playing the person who's actually trying to get out of the bishop and knight checkmate, your idea should be to try and go to the opposite coloured square of the bishop in the corner, because that's the longest way to delay the checkmate and try and trick your opponent to forget the sequence. But king e5 here, king g6, and bishop e6. You can already see that white has cornered black. King g7, and now just king f5, king h6, and now knight g4. We're almost into this sequence that we've talked about. King g7 and knight e5, and it can hop into f7 and g6 here. If king h6, king f6, and if king h7, knight g6, we're in the starting position, just at a different angle. And also in this position, if the king decides to flee the other way, let's say king h5, bishop g8, remember from the earlier sequences, king h4, king f5, king g3, and now knight g4. Remember, we're covering these squares. And if the king decides to pop up, we'll just play bishop here. And the king goes backwards and we're into the sequence again. And black has actually forced himself closer to this square. Anyway, I hope this video has provided some insight into the bishop and knight checkmate. It's not as easy as other checkmates because you actually do have to remember some technique. And there's just no way around that. But with some practice, 100% out with a 100% success rate. It will get to the point where in some endgames people will try and trade off into this sort of endgame just to think that you can't do it, so it's very important that you do. Grandmasters have failed to use this technique in multiple videos, whereas some other Grandmasters have managed to achieve it in bullets with less than 10 seconds left. Anyway, I hope you do well in your future endgame endeavours, and if you like this video, just please get a like and subscribe for more chess tutorials in the future. I'll see you soon.